All right, folks, we are back with Erika Brown of the Cricket. We have big items to unpack here because we just had town meetings completed in Manchester by the Sea and Essex. So, Erika, how are you doing? Let's get right into it.
Exactly. I know it's a lot of stuff, and I know you're coming off of a really busy season too. So we're both going to really enjoy our holidays.
Yeah, I think so. We'll sleep right through them. Wake me up in
A lot, a
2024.
lot. We had two town meetings. We had like, it was just a lot, a lot.
Yeah. Well, I guess let's start in Manchester. And how did I know the citizens articles were big on the ticket, were a big ticket item. So, how did those play out?
They were highly talked about. I mean, first of all, that both of the town meetings were happening at the same time. So there was almost like dueling. I was going from one to the other, and then I had somebody cover the Manchester one. We talked last time about the citizens articles, which were, I think, three of them. Well, four of them actually, I think. Yeah, yeah. But they were about three topics, and all of them failed. So, or actually, I shouldn't say that. Nearly all of them failed, but one was pulled. One was pulled, so it wasn't even considered. So that was about things like, and that was big news, but it wasn't the biggest news of town meeting. But the big news was, it was big news that the citizens articles about wanting to, any zoning changes that were passed at town meeting, they wanted to have a second sort of belt and suspenders thing, take it to a ballot as well in order for zoning to pass. That was criticized for being kind of a NIMBY, not in my backyard article. That failed. Then the other thing that failed was sort of the two-part kind of effort, I'm going to call it, to permanently preserve and then and really permanently through its structure, Powder House the reservation. That was also viewed by some, although the Manchester Matters, which was sponsoring these citizens articles, many of them, nearly all of them, was saying, oh no, this isn't a NIMBY thing. It's not about developers. But in their own mailer that they sent to everyone in town, it was about stopping development. so they kind of shot themselves in the foot there. But they wanted to permanently preserve Powder House Reservation, which is a beautiful wooded park downtown. But there's a part of it that's actually on a very densely, a dense residential area of Pine Street. They wanted to use that for the Affordable Housing Trust Plan to expand senior housing, subsidized affordable housing. And this article would have kneecapped that. It would have stopped it. And I'm sure the citizens people were saying, no, we don't mean that. But that would have been the outcome. So that also failed. Mm-hmm. The third thing was actually where all the fireworks were, and that was what we talked about, the Manchester Community Center. Yes. And that kind of is linked to the rest of the articles because there were two articles, one from the town and then a citizens initiative, right? So there were two separate articles about the future of the Manchester Community Center. The Manchester Community Center, kind of, even though the town had already now the Manchester Community Center lost its lease, right? We know that, right? And so there was a big public outcry about, we want the future of the community center to be preserved. The condo association that owns the land under which the community center was at, and is the organization, by the way, that gave them free rent for, I don't know, decades, and has been very good to them. So it's not like, we're clubbing a baby seal here. Mm. So they just said, we can't work with this organization anymore. And we won't work with this organization anymore. Well, the town, and Greg Federspiel, he led this, that he actually brokered a 10-year lease to take over the community center and to continue its operations as a community center, with the added benefit of having it solve some of the town's challenges, some pebbles in the town's shoe, which was we want to find a proper place for a harbor master office, and that would be it. The second thing is we want public bathrooms for downtown. That would also solve that problem, and we would have a community center. So it kind of was a perfect solution. Well, in the face of a perfect solution, which was this article, I think it was Article 8, which was the town's article to say, support us in this lease. And if you say yes, we're going to go ahead and do it. So in other words, the deal was already struck. In the face of that, the community center still had its own citizens petition to take over the land underneath the building by eminent domain, which is a very, very extreme move. And they were stubborn about it. And they met with the town the week before, right up until town meeting. And the town was like, why are you doing this? Like, why? We solved the problem already. And they were like, no, we're going to sue. They had hired a 40A attorney, and that they were going to sue to either have the right to indefinitely move the building somewhere else, or have the right to stay where they are, and couple that with eminent domain. So, which would have been expensive and also was extremely unrealistic. I do not think it's legally possible for a private charity to take over something by eminent domain. Anyway, it's all moot because the Manchester Community Center administration, they were all sitting together. They went into that meeting like a lion, but they walked out like a lamb, because there was such overwhelming popular support for the efforts that the town made on this lease, that in the face of that, they had to stand up and then say, and, we're also going to take it over eminent domain. And then suddenly they were all like, oh, Santa's coming next month. Come on, go community center. And we're going to pull the article. So listen, I don't care how they got there, but they got there. They got to the right place. But it was, wow.
Oh, yeah. That's the magic of town meeting. Yeah. So, Erika, let's quickly turn our attention to Essex, because there were two huge items there as well. First, Apple Street.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to you about Apple Street. There's actually 3 items, and the third item actually links Manchester and Essex.
Right,
so that's
exactly. I figure we save that for the end.
So Apple Street is, when I talk about Apple Street, I'm talking about a project that the town has spent a lot of money actually on planning. And that was using Apple Street, which is an idyllic, beautiful, bucolic road. For those who aren't, it's one of Essex's most desirable roads. It's got all the charm in the world, right? And it also happens to be the perfect link between Southern Avenue and, I always forget, is it technically Martin Street? I think, but anyway, yeah, so it links the east with the west part of the town that the causeway also links and is the main linkage. But when the causeway floods, which is predicted to happen more often, you have a really bad situation where 46% of the town's residents are on one side and the public safety buildings on the other. And much of the 46%, they're on wells. So it just doesn't feel right. Now, they acknowledge that, the flooding isn't going to happen that often, but when it does, it's really necessary. So they wanted to fortify, which means widen and raise Apple Street, fix the culvert underneath it in this one area, just the entrance of it, in order to allow emergency vehicles to be able to pass from one end to the other during an emergency. Well, it came up and there was all sorts of fighting about it last spring, and it got voted down at the annual town meeting. Because residents said, oh, it's a scenic byway, and which is not true. It's a scenic road, but that doesn't mean it's not an actual public road that can be used by emergency vehicles. It's just, they don't want to see it happen. The town needs easements by eminent domain for slivers of land to widen the street by 2 feet. So 1 foot on either side, but they're also going to raise it pretty significantly. And actually that culvert is very vulnerable. So they're going to need to solve this, by the way, someday. This isn't like a binary choice, do it or not. It's a matter of when we're going to do it and who's going to pay for it. And that was basically the town's argument. And it was put forth by Peter Phippen, who is a noted environmental, he's not an environmental engineer, he's an environmental scientist though. He works for the Merrimack Valley wetlands, blah, blah, blah. So if anybody has sort of the authority to say this is okay we need to do this, it's him. So he brought it up. Town, tried again, and the opponents came out and they said, you can't, it's violent to take, this by eminent domain, and this isn't necessary, it's overbuilding it, it's not necessary, They won. And that project has been shut down again. And they also said, listen, we already told you no, why come back, and that was kind of a hard elephant in the room, which is what one of the residents called it. And then the last thing I would just say is that, in the end, Lisa O'Donnell, who is the head of the planning board, she said, listen, when this happens and the feds make us do this, or the state make us do this, it's not going to be a choice of eminent domain. They don't ask you, they just tell you. that they're going to take this by eminent domain, and it's going to have to happen. And the only difference is right now we have federal grants to pay for the whole thing. When it happens to us and we're made to do it later, we're going to have to pay for it out of our own pocket. And then the DPW director said, yeah, we were pig-headed about the water and sewer hookup. And we said, no, 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 during grants, no. And guess what? We were made to do it, and we had to pay for it ourselves, and we were pig-headed about it. And that was actually the word he used, pig-headed. So that's what happened. It was a lot. It was difficult to watch them go through it, but that's what happened, and we'll see what it means.
To be continued. Okay. And finally, Erika, zoning in Essex.
Oh, I have to say, yeah, okay. Zoning was talked about, not at all. It was this, okay, if this was the warrant, this much of it was zoning. You know what I mean? Like in terms of just the sheer weight of it. The planning board's been working on codification for the last 2 years under Lisa O'Donnell. She's kind of headed this up with the planning board. And I guess it's a testament to what a really methodical job they've done. They've done this step by step, lots of public hearings, communicate. Essex, and she said this, and this is why it's so crazy that like it went through like butter. So I'll just tell you, they passed a general use district, which is 98% of the land in Essex is now under a district. Just rational rules. You can't do anything anywhere at any time practically, which is kind of was Essex's boast that they were
Wild West. Yeah.
It's like the Wild West. But she had mentioned, do you know Essex was the last municipality in Eastern Massachusetts to only have no zones?
Really? Yeah.
Truly, it was really kind of an outlier. So now it went through, and it went through without a single piece of public comment. It required a 2/3 vote. It went through. So I thought it was most important because it was so historic. Like, think about how old Essex is, how long it's been around since it was Tobacco Parish. Do you know what I mean? It's one of our oldest communities, perhaps in the United States. And they've always done things their own way right up until today. And this was very historic. So there you go.
There you have it. Okay. And then to put a bow on this, another big topic, the Manchester Essex Regional School District.
Yeah, this is something that, we've been watching it for a long time. We've been talking about it for a long time. And this is sort of this storm that's brewing. And so I personally was looking to some of these votes at town meeting that are very kind of precursors as bellwether votes on how things are going to swing by the time we get to next spring, which is when the budget for the Manchester Essex School District has to get, finalized and approved by the towns. And remember, the school district comprises about, let's just put 50% of the budget of both towns, right? And the budget goes up in the school district about 3 to 3.5% every year, right? So it goes up. We're under Proposition 2.5, so that's really the goal we're trying to hit for every municipality in the Commonwealth. And our enrollment's going down. So that just gives you me just telling you those three things, you probably feel pressure. You should, because there is pressure. So last year, as you know, and by the way the apportionment happens with the agreement between the towns of Essex and Manchester, any changes in enrollment, Manchester enrollment has gone down, I believe, about 300 kids, and Essex's has gone up 18 or so. I may not be perfectly correct on those numbers, but it's about right. And as a result, Manchester's assessment went up 1.8 or something like that, under 2% last year, whereas Essex's went up over 4%. So it's very, very traumatic for Essex. And they didn't pass a Proposition 2.5 override. So that's the background, right? So we go into town meetings. There's two kind of interesting things happening in Essex, two articles for the school district. The first one was about the turfs. I was watching the turfs because they should have approved that last spring, but didn't. They kind of punted because of in Essex, because of the budget tenderness and the fact that they needed to go to they were asking to go to the reserves and stuff like that, right? So they kicked it to this fall, and I thought, because the turfs were already replaced this summer, it's just a matter of how you're going to pay for it. Guess what? I was expecting that if that was a tough vote, then we were in for a lot of trouble in the spring, right? Guess what? It went through super easily. $350,000, boom, done. I was
Oh,
like,
wow. Okay.
all right. So that's number one. But then it came to number two, which was there was a second school district article put forth by the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom. And by the way, both towns, Select Board and FinComs, are in lockstep on this. They want a third party consultant to come in and look at operations and look for opportunities for efficiencies. Okay. So they want a third party. They suggested that back in a big honking meeting of everyone, including the school committee, in September. So 2 months ago, 2 months ago. So it's not news, right? It wasn't news to the school committee that they wanted a third party, but the school committee basically said, we just got this last week. We don't know what this is. It wasn't collaborative. And the truth is, it wasn't collaborative. They're absolutely correct. And that, I think, probably was a misstep. I don't know. But both towns put forward money for this consultant, right? Manchester, so I'm going to start with Manchester, earlier in the night, they voted it down. They said, nope. Where would the school committee? The voters said, where would the school committee? Because the school committee said, we're not going to take a position on this. But really, they didn't take a position because they're not for it. And they're not for it because it wasn't collaboratively done. That's what they're saying. And they're also saying that the Department of Education is willing to do the same kind of an audit for free. And free is good. The truth is it a third party if the Department of Education is doing your own audit? That's the question. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you, but that's sort of what they're talking about. So you would think that 2 hours later, over in Essex, their $40,000 line item for this consultant would get voted down because the point is what? Moot, right? And everybody knew it. And Annie Cameron, who was on the school committee, she's awesome. Essex, she stands up and she's a big supporter of the school district. And she said, listen, Manchester just voted this down, people. So let's not even, basically like, we don't need to worry about this. Well, it produced a huge debate in Essex, despite it. And think about this. Essex is the one that didn't have the money really as much. They were stretched with money last year. And they voted through $40,000 for a consultant.
Wow.
They voted it through, Manchester didn't. And I find that to be really, really fascinating. And Ruth Perrine, who is the chairman of the Board of Selectmen over there, she stood up, and I have her on video, and I'll send it to you if you're interested. But she, at the end, basically gave a treatise. I did not include this in my piece on it, but she basically said, listen, we have been accused by the school district of of harassing them for numbers. And she showed that she asked for basic operational numbers of, teachers, not anonymized data on teachers, class sizes, just the basics of operations so that you can get a handle on whether or not there's efficiencies. And she said she also asked the North Shore Tech district for the same data, and she showed the differences between what she got. One was a 51-page document from the Manchester Essex School District. The other one was the 51-page was from North Shore Tech. The 70-something page was from MERSD, right? And she showed it. It was kind of dramatic. One full of spreadsheets, full of numbers. That was from Essex Tech. Just nothing but disclosure. The other one was all redacted, all blocked out. And so there is definitely trouble in that relationship. There's no trust or little. There's a lot of, there's just some therapy needed.
Got to talk that out.
So I just found that to be very interesting. And sorry if I talked too much about that, but it was very interesting. It's very interesting. We need to watch that. It'll be interesting.
Oh no, huge things going on. Okay, do you quickly want to touch upon, of course, as we careen towards Thanksgiving now, high school sports, right? Some big seasons over in Manchester.
I have to say, Jason Brisbois, who covers sports for us, he is just so good. And he has been working overtime on covering all of the teams because all the teams had really interesting seasons this year. But the top one is that field hockey, girls field hockey has just done great. I have to watch what happened, but they got to the Final Four. They went from Sweet 16. What do they call it? Like Sweet 16 to
the Elite Eight.
Elite Eight, and now the Final Four. So we just want to send them a big shout out. And of course, the Hornets football is going to be back actually for Thanksgiving at a home game. So just a shout out to all the teams. I feel like all the teams did really, really well, whether it was girls soccer, girls field hockey, cross country. I mean, they just did really, really well.
Good.
Anyway.
Do we want to touch upon the musings at all, or we want to?
I do want to just give a shout out, if that's
Yeah,
okay, because Pete Wilworth grew up in Manchester. He's a total, like, Manchester, you'd call him a Manchester townie in the best possible way. He comes from the Wilworth family, which is legendary in Manchester because he's the 8th of 14 children.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that rivals that is the Browns, who were 10 kids. So, I mean, a lot of just sheer mass, just
That's
a lot
clan.
of.
Yep.
Anyway, so he wrote this piece a while ago. He sent it to me and I put it away because it was so good. And I would encourage everybody to read it. Everyone is getting the paper this week because of our holiday supplement. So everyone's going to get it. It starts on page 8. It's page 8 and page 9. It's called Manchester Musings. And it's a piece of writing that is so soulful and so detailed and so funny and so awesome about him at 12 years old in the 60s, working at Manchester Seafood on Union Street for a couple, Viv and, oh my gosh, Viv and Bob. I got to look it up. Viv and Bob Flanders, yeah, Viv and Bob Flanders. Talks about Captain Dusty, Bruce Lesane, and just the whole working of the fit and the characters in town. And it's colorful, it's awesome. My favorite little thing is Bruce Lesane and Captain Dusty. His boat was called the Dirty Shame. If I ever have a boat, I want to call it the Dirty Shame. Anyway, it's an amazing piece, and I really hope everyone enjoys it because I definitely did. And I want to give a big shout out to Pete Wilworth because he is a really good writer. So there you go.
There you go. And hats off to you and the cricket staff. That is, I mean, it's a tough time of year, 2 huge town meetings, getting ready for the holidays. So yeah, I'm giving you the rest of the day off, Erika.
Bring on the beer.
Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you next week. Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.